The Isle of Mull, famous for its mountains, hills and forests.
Inhabited by iconic species such as red deer and golden eagles.
And at this time of year, the weather, rain, lots and lots of rain. The sky feeds the rivers and streams that run in waterfalls down from the mountains and out into the sea.
The seas around Mull are home to a huge variety of life, from otters and sea eagles
to the strange creatures of the rocky shore.
Mull's shoreline is teeming with life and provides a rich food source for many different bird species.
Waders such as oystercatchers and curlew use their long bills to forage for worms and mollusks hidden in the sand or mud.
Cormorants and shags dive beneath the water to hunt fish and crustaceans.
They can often be seen basking in the sun, drying or preening their feathers on rocks and buoys.
Large grey herons lie in wait, standing motionless as they let their prey come to them.
Then they strike. Perhaps one of the most well-known shorebirds is the herring gull.
They are normally a nuisance in towns and cities, but on Mull, they are in their natural habitat and can be seen diving to catch crabs and fish. Here, you can see the unusual behaviour of dropping shells from a height in order to crack them open, which they have learnt from watching crows.
Another funky shorebird is the red-breasted merganser. They are often seen in pairs or groups, displaying to each other.
Here, you can see this one has caught a fish. Perhaps the most impressive shorebird is the white-tailed sea eagle.
These majestic birds of prey hunt along the coast with a diet consisting mainly of fish.
Here you can see this one flies so low across the water, he's actually startled an otter.
Otters are often seen along the shores of Mull.
These furry carnivores are commonly associated with freshwater rivers, as they need to wash in clean water to remove the salt from their fur. But on Mull, they can be seen taking full advantage of the diverse shorelines, where they are completely at home playing in the sea.
As naturally occurs this time of year, these three siblings have recently been left by their mother to fend for themselves. They are a joy to watch as they play fight, learning valuable skills.
This otter caught a fish so large that it has come ashore to enjoy it properly, whilst the crow, famous for scavenging, waits patiently for scraps.
Otters dive down to catch crustaceans and fish that are plentiful along the coast.
The butterfish being their favourite food of choice.
As the tide retreats, it reveals a hidden world.
Having spent most of the day submerged beneath the waves and then being exposed to the air and sunlight.
Many creatures take refuge under rocks and seaweed or in tide pools to await the incoming tide.
The different states of tide mean certain areas of the shoreline are exposed above the water for longer periods of time than others, creating 4 different habitats known as intertidal zones.
These being
The splash zone,
the upper shore
the middle shore.
and the lower shore.
Each zone will be home to different types of species that have adapted to survive and cope with prolonged levels of exposure to the air.
The most diverse and abundant zone is the lower shore because it remains underwater the longest, meaning creatures have to adapt less to survive there.
Different substrate and exposure to the waves will also influence the amount of life on the shoreline. For example, a sandy beach will hold less life than a boulder and seaweed covered shore.
The rocky shore is a treacherous habitat for camera equipment and filming, with slippery rocks and salt water. So in order to film the rocky shore inhabitants with ease, we decided to set up an observation tank to give us the ability to get a closer look at the creatures' activities.
In order to replicate a habitat where the fish would display their natural behaviour, we needed to collect some substrate. Once collected, we added the salt water and substrate into the tank to allow it to settle. Whilst the water settles, we collected rocks, seaweed and shells from the shoreline. We placed them into the tank to allow the creatures to feel more at home.
We then returned to the shoreline to find the little things. Before transporting them back to the tank safely. And then simply waited for the drama to unfold.
Hermit crabs can be found abundantly on the rocky shores. These little crustaceans inhabit abandoned seashells that help provide camouflage and protection from the elements and predators. When a hermit crab outgrows its current shell, or just fancies a newer one, it looks for a larger one to change into.
But competition can be fierce. And in some places, a lot of the shells are already taken. When transitioning from one shell to another, a hermit crab's soft body is extremely vulnerable, so it must make the change to its new shell as quickly as possible.
The hermit crab has a new snazzy shell to call home.
Although this one still seems a bit reluctant to give up his old shell. So the other hermit crab will have to wait a little while longer. Long-spined sea scorpions sit and wait under rocks and seaweed in a predatory manner, waiting for prey to pass.
These incredible fish are masters of disguise and can change colour to help them blend into their surroundings, making them incredibly hard to spot. For example, we found this one hiding under a patch of red seaweed. They have several small spines along their bodies that serve as protection and are good for gripping and manoeuvring around rocks.
The rockling. These eel-like fish are very fast and agile and perfectly designed for life on the rocky shore.
Their slippery bodies help them slide under rocks and into small crevices. And their fins act like legs for moving short distances between pools.
Their face is covered in strange-looking barbels that help them feel their way through their environment and detect vibrations in the dark. Similar to the sea scorpion, but far more numerous, shanies can also change colour to blend into their surroundings.
They will feed on almost anything they can find, from shrimp to seaweed.
Normally found in tide pools, these fish are very fast and good at finding hiding spots. When the tide is out, barnacles can be seen attached to rocks in their millions.
Whilst above the waterline, they are found tightly closed. Beneath the water, they let out their feather-like appendages, known as cirri, to filter food from the water.
Spiny starfish are covered in pale spines and move around using their many tubed feet. They have the amazing ability to regrow limbs if they are lost. Surprisingly, most starfish will feed on crustaceans and mollusks and even have been known to eat other starfish.
Closely related to the starfish, sea urchins have fixed spines for protection, but will also gather and wear stones to armour and disguise themselves from predators. Young shore crabs like to hide beneath rocks and boulders and bury themselves in the sand until the tide returns. They are the most common species of crab in the UK. And are opportunistic hunters and scavengers.
This hermit crab is being very cautious about the shore crab buried in the sand. It slowly edges past, making sure not to disturb it.
As the tide returns, we can film the critters in their natural habitat. We managed to film some of their behaviours from a pontoon using an underwater camera.
Strange things live beneath the waves here. Many species of starfish creep along the sand. A bizarre polychaete or peacock worm uses feather-like tendrils to filter out food from the current. When startled, it retreats back into its tube for protection.
Large common whelks search for algae to graze on. These strange-looking tracks are left in the silt by hermit crabs as they walk along the seabed, dragging their heavy shells behind them.
Adult shore crabs roam the ocean floor, scavenging for food and scraps. This one has found an old mussel shell. But there are other shore crabs that are hungry. And fights often break out. The winner retreats to enjoy its prize.
The shores around Mull can be a harsh place to live, but all these creatures have adapted to cope with the changing conditions to call this wonderful place home.